Hello, hello. Welcome to Alchemized Women. My guest today is Sharon Shelton, mindfulness teacher and mentor. I have the privilege of knowing through Banyan Together that I had a chance to work with her, and where she's a founding advisor and teacher, and she's also a mentor in MMTCP, Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Certification Program, on the teaching council alongside with Tara Brock and Jack Kornfield, and both of whom speak about her with real love. Jack calls her a wise, loving, skilled teacher, and this is how I experienced her too. And Sharon, welcome. Thank you for being here, and it means a lot to me.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? It's been a bit
Yeah.
of a busy day, but I'm good.
I'm very excited. Thank you for accepting my offer, really. Thank you for being here. It
No
means a
problem.
lot to me. And
Yeah, no problem.
yeah, because this whole event, Alchemized Women, is about like meeting transitions. Because
Yeah.
we, as women, we have lots of transitions.
I think in constant transitions. I think that's
Yes.
one of the things I've learned about this life is that everything is impermanence. Everything is always moving, and that's just part of the deal.
Yeah. And yeah, and
Yeah.
we are aging.
Yes. Yes, we
And
are.
there is grief in our life, and there are like ordinary heartbreaks and joys
Yeah.
and
Yes. Yes.
self-compassion and presence. And what moved me about your teaching that you don't point freedom to somewhere else. It's like
Yes.
you're pointing
Yes.
right back to life. So
To this moment.
yeah, to this moment. And
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit more about this? Like how
Mm.
mindfulness became part of your life? How is it your part of life now? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful question. And so, I didn't like many people who come to this practice. I came to this practice through a lot of suffering. And I was struggling with alcoholism in my 20s and found it very difficult to get sober. Um, Several treatment facilities um, and so, part of my early recovery was looking for ways to actually be able to function um, without alcohol.
Mm.
And I think one of the first books I came across was, I think it was a Pema Chodron book. I think it was When Things Fall Apart. And I read that, and something about the writing resonated with me. It felt as though she understood the suffering that I was experiencing and was also offering a way out. And so I got curious. I was skeptical, but I got curious. And so as my mind continued to clear, as I continued into recovery, and I continued to just sort of devour every book I could find on Buddhism, on Eastern philosophy, on you know cognitive behavioral therapy. I was uh, really trying to understand this mind. And so that sort of led me on this path to uh, mindfulness and compassion. And I've been studying and practicing ever since. I got sober in April of 1997. And I've been really fortunate to have come across uh, teachers and spiritual friends who have supported me on this path. And so when you ask the question about um, many times we often understand this teaching of waking up from suffering as some place we need to arrive at, sort of like a noun. And that's really how I came into this practice. I mean, I was thinking there was some way I would be able to practice my way out of experiencing life the way I was experiencing it, that I needed to become a better person. I need to I really kind of treated it like a self-improvement project in a way.
Mm.
And and honestly, that worked to for a degree. I began to cultivate some more wholesome and healthy habits. Um, but it left this sort of residue of not good enough, of always becoming something, of always leaning forward into the next moment and not really being 100% fully in my own life. So it left this residue of suffering, this sort of grasping after this mythical me, that didn't experience doubt or didn't experience self-judgment or anything like that. But what I've come to understand over these years is that uh, when I shifted my practice from um, uh, not being a self-improvement project, but from changing my relationship to my life just as it was unfolding, I think everything shifted. And I think it's because that piece of grasping, that clinging to something, um, started to fall away a bit. And I was able to be sort of more present with exactly how my life was unfolding, how my particular nervous system responded to the world because of causes and conditions, that I grew up in. Um, some that I'm aware of, most that I'm not, that give rise to how I'm experiencing my life in this given moment, what actually triggers me, where I get stuck and where I feel sad and so um, it changed the lens from there's something wrong with me, I need to fix myself, to how do I be more fully in my life in a way that's more compassionate and more wise. Um,
Mm.
and so that's where my focus becomes. And I can do that. I can cultivate those capacities right in this given moment. I could plant seeds in any given moment, uh, seeds that actually um, give rise to the fruits of more self-acceptance, more clarity, more clear seeing, more compassion, more equanimity, and without trying so hard. I didn't need to become someone different. I just needed to relate to this unique life in a way that did not perpetuate my own suffering. And that has become a practice. So, in that way, awakening is more of a verb than it is a noun.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't met anybody who's awakened, so I can't speak to awakening. But what I can speak to is that I know people who are freer and freer and freer and freer. And that's not because their lives are perfect or they're not experiencing aging or they're not, they don't have parents that can sometimes trigger them or kids who sometimes trigger them. But it's because their relationship to all of life, lifing, and humans, humaning is different.
Mhm. You touched very vulnerable points for me, like
Mm,
clinging, clinging to practice as a self-improvement project.
yes,
Like
yes,
I
yeah,
was there too. It was like I was using meditation and mindfulness practices, both formal and informal, as like to fix something. Let's
yes,
fix this pattern and let's fix
yes,
this and let's fix that. And then when you realize those fixation, and it took time for me, to be honest,
yes,
it took a lot of time.
yeah,
Then when you realize that part and like, oh, okay, then things start to shift. This like more accepting yourself as you are.
yes,
Then,
yes,
like you mentioned, then compassion
yeah,
awakens and start to blossom, and then your
yes,
compassion to other people because you understand your triggers,
yes,
how you
exactly.
behave, and then you can understand the people. Okay, you might
It's
behave like this
yes,
due to some reason that
right,
I don't know.
right. There becomes this sort of softening towards ourselves that many of us are not accustomed to experiencing. For many of us, we were taught that we had to strive to get better, that we have to work really hard, we have to um, become better people um, in order to feel worthy. And what I've discovered is that our worthiness is inherent. No one can take our worthiness away from us. But there are so many things that obscure that knowing of that worthiness. And so uh, there was a teacher. I was on retreat recently, and there was a teacher. I think it was Howard Cohn, and he said something like he heard this from someone else, and he said something like, "Who you are is not your fault." And he said that, and I was like, I was skeptical. So I had to add for myself onto that comment, who you are is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And here's what I think he meant by that. The way we're responding to the world, as I mentioned, is a function of causes and conditions that we did not choose. I didn't choose this conditioning. I didn't choose these places where I get triggered or where I get stuck. That's how my nervous system responds to the world as a function of causes and conditions. Some that I'm aware of, family systems, culture, intergenerational trauma. Some I'm aware of, most I'm not. Could be a conversation I overheard when I was 6 years old on the playground that influenced in some way the way I'm responding to you right now. So and I didn't choose that conditioning. If I had a choice, I probably would have chosen different conditioning.
Me too.
But I didn't have, right? But I didn't have a choice. Neither did our parents. But I didn't have a choice. So uh, it's helpful to understand that conditioning. Like, oh, okay. But that's not where our freedom lives.
Mhm.
Our freedom lives in this current moment, so we can understand our conditioning, and maybe that understanding can lead to a greater compassion for ourselves, a softening towards ourselves when we snap at somebody, or when we feel depressed, or when we're struggling with aging and all the identity issues that may arise around that. We can be compassionate with ourselves by just saying, I understand why this nervous system responds in this way. And then we can say, okay, but what's my practice today? I can plant seeds today that will bear fruit
Mm.
uh, going forward, because that's just how it works. That's the law of conditionality. And so many of us, um, especially women, I find in midlife, we get stuck in this space of judgment around who we are. And we look for these different pieces of content to tell us this 3 steps to feeling this, 4 things to better this. And I think what I found in my all of my time working with so many women in midlife who are in these phases of transition, like you talked about in the beginning, their kids are leaving, maybe they're becoming empty nesters, maybe the kids are coming back, unexpectedly. Parents are aging, our bodies are changing in ways that we did not anticipate. Like, I used to wake up with an ache, and okay, you get up, you work it out, and then the ache doesn't usually come back. But now I'm realizing, oh, there's certain aches that are just that are just going to be there. And so we have to develop a new relationship with this body and all that comes with that. And so judging all of that or trying to fix all of that as if it's a problem, I think perpetuates suffering. And so what I'm in my own practice and what I'm inviting others into uh, explore as well is, what if it were possible to relate to all of that phenomena in a way that did not perpetuate suffering? Hmm. So what if I related to my doubt or my joy or my insecurity uh, with understanding and kindness, and then said, okay, what seeds would I like to plant now? Are they seeds of compassion? Are they seeds of courage? Are they seeds of clarity? Are they seeds of truthfulness? Are they seeds of patience and love, equanimity? And those seeds don't need to be, we don't need to wait to plant those seeds until we're on a 2-week retreat or a month-long retreat. We can plant those seeds right now. We're planting seeds right now in this conversation because I'm right here with you. My heart is open. And so we can plant those seeds while we're eating our meals, or while we're taking a shower, or when we're in a meeting and we feel ourselves here. We can practice it when our heart feels despair at the state of the world. and we don't collapse around that fear, but we make space for it.
Mm. This is what I love about your practice. Like you are taking practice, this inner contemplative practice out of the cushion and
Uh-huh.
into life.
Yes. Yes.
Like it's not for me, it wasn't only retreats, but like off the cushion, I was like, okay, you know,
Yes. Because we
okay,
spend
let's
most of our life
continue.
off the cushion. We spend
Yes.
most of our life off the cushion, right? And so I've become much less interested in dramatic spiritual experiences. Those are nice. Like I just came back from a 2 week retreat, had several experiences of just joy and bliss and peace and looking at a little bug on a leaf and you just want to cry at the miracle of it. And so those are wonderful, but I'm much more interested in how can I be free right here, right now, while I'm doing the laundry, while I'm cooking my dinner, while I'm having a conversation. What does it mean to feel free right in the context of our day-to-day life? And so we don't have to create any sort of artificial conditions or special conditions or wait until everything is just right to feel free. And that was like, that was like, when I fully understood that was possible, and when I not only considered that that was possible, but that I was collecting evidence that that was possible. I feel freer than I've ever felt. So it's not like I needed to believe something someone told me. I checked it out, checked it out. It's okay. Let me try that. And then I noticed what happened. I noticed what happened when I softened the criticism of myself when I was unskillful. I noticed what happened when I was courageous and opened my heart when I felt vulnerable. I noticed what happened when I slowed down and didn't walk or talk so fast. And I noticed what happened when I stopped being performative in a meeting because I felt
Mm.
insecure. You know, I noticed what happened. And then so I was gathering evidence of, oh, this is what leads to suffering. This is what leads to the cessation of suffering. So let me orient uh, my response to life as best I can in this direction. And then trust the practice to do the practice.
Mm.
So trust that if I plant seeds, if I create the causes and conditions internally and externally right now, then that will bear fruit. And that's been my experience. And so that's what I invite, particularly women in this really rich uh, uh, time in our lives to explore for themselves. And it can feel really shaky at times. And sometimes when we're waking up to our own lives, it feels vulnerable. And I don't know how you get around that friction of uh, expansion. There's a certain friction that happens in expansion,
Yeah.
certain discomfort when you're meeting life differently than you have been.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you get around that discomfort. I don't know how you get around lifting a heavier weight to get stronger. I wish I could figure that out, but I haven't. So I'm like, okay, when the discomfort comes, when, ooh, you know, we trust that the practice uh, is beneficial, not because someone told us, but because we've had the
Yeah.
experience that practice is beneficial. And then when we have capacity, we practice. And there are going to be times when we don't, when it's just too difficult. Our system is too activated. And in those moments, perhaps we seek support. We borrow someone else's confidence. I often borrow the confidence of my teacher and friend, Dara. And we offer ourselves deep compassion for being human because it's hard sometimes, especially for women.
No, it
And it's
is.
hard for all of us, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about, moving.
Yes.
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And yeah, when I look history, like Mandela,
Yeah,
Dalai Lama, Desmond
yeah,
Tutu, they are not like the more comfortable and joyful lives,
right.
but they are full of compassion, joy,
Yes.
and love. And when you watch them talking, even on the screen, you can feel
Yeah.
something is different. You can
Yes. You
feel
feel the
even
truth
even
of it.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
feel something different. And then
Yeah.
then it was the time that I understand, okay, it will not like when I will practice 45 minutes a day for 3 years, it will be better. No.
Yes.
Then
Right.
sometimes there are like chores and
Mm.
sicknesses and problems and things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I cannot practice, but regularly I'm
Yes.
practicing, but it's not like 1 hour every day. It's
Right.
impossible. And if
Yeah.
we push ourselves as an improvement project,
Right.
as you said,
Right.
then it
Yeah.
becomes impossible. Then
Yeah.
we start to use practice to judge ourselves again. But even,
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, we can use this as an evidence.
Yes.
Oh, oh, okay, I'm using my practice.
And just
Oh,
noticing, no
yes,
judgment.
no
No
judgment. Oh,
judgment.
okay. Then Joseph Costin mainly says that don't waste your suffering.
That's
You
right.
know?
I love that
Yeah.
line. I
Yes.
love that line.
It
Because
is
with the
im-
life is going to continue to life.
yeah.
I mean, we and you know when you talk about folks like Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu and you know what that says to me is that you know our freedom and our joy feels like it's dependent on outside circumstances, but it really is not. Because if we think it's totally dependent on outside circumstances, then we'll spend much of our life just sort of trying to choreograph people, places, and things. If this human behaves in this way, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
If the global politics are like this, then I'll be happy. If it's sunny outside, then I'll be happy. If I feel good about my body, then I'll be happy. If my kid just does his homework when I tell him to do it, then I'll be happy. This, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be happy. And we can spend our whole lives there when the freedom and the peace and the ease that we're seeking uh, is found in the relationship to what's happening, not
Yeah.
in the content of what's happening. And that's something very different than what we were taught and what the culture says. You know, the culture is literally profiting off of our sense of insufficiency.
Yes.
You know, they're actually
Yeah.
profiting off of our distraction from our lives. So, so it is a real practice for so many of us to turn inward and say, okay, what truly gives rise to suffering, what truly gives rise to the cessation of suffering. And what I've found is that again, it's in the relationship to whether it's raining or not. It's in my relationship to my fatigue or my disappointment or my grief or whatever it is. It's in the relationship because the things that are happening to us, pain is inevitable. You know, this
Yeah.
life is filled with pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. It's happening constantly. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And sometimes when we think when we meet unpleasant or pain that something has gone wrong. But that's just life. Life is lifing.
Yeah. And
And yes,
you
please.
know, I first hear this, I think, from Tara.
Yeah.
But when I first hear they're like pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And this is how life is. I was surprised, because I was
Ah,
expecting it was like more than 10 years ago.
yeah.
And I was like expecting life should be always pleasant
Mm,
and joyful. If
yeah.
something happens, it was my problem. I did
Yes.
something wrong. It's like,
Yes.
and when she
Yes.
said it, even hearing like, okay, I need to think about this a bit. Like I need to contemplate
Yes.
on that. Like,
Yes. And suffering can be sort of a heavy-handed word, you know, that
yeah,
this it's inevitable, but you know, we're talking about the little the things that are unsatisfactory. We get things we don't want, we want things we don't get. We stub our toe, little tiny sufferings, or we wake up and we have this ache. So it's not just the big sufferings, like we lose somebody we love, but life is inherently some unsatisfactoriness because everything is always changing.
Yeah.
It's the nature of everything to change. So even the things we love, we will lose. Things we don't want will come because that's just sort of what life does. And so we expend so much energy trying to fix that or control that
Mm.
or be better people so that we can handle that better or and I found this the a much gentler and more effective way to practice is to really understand that these are the truths of life, that there is pain and suffering. Ruth King often says that it's not perfect, it's not permanent, and it's not personal. And it's just lifing. And so instead of putting all of our energy onto how do I control life so that I'm happy all the time, which is not possible, redirect that energy to a practice of how can I meet whatever is unfolding in a way that's wise and compassionate and present, loving, creative, courageous, patient. Uh, and then what comes from that place is much more skillful. My responses to the people around me, the how I lead in any capacity, how I treat the person who's helping me check my groceries out at the store. It arises from that place of steadiness and wisdom, and not from a place of constant agitation because I'm trying to get the moment to constantly be different than it already is.
Yeah. And
The
then
moment
I
is
think,
already unfolding.
yeah. And
Yeah.
when you give a pause, a space,
Yes. Beautiful
then
space.
yeah, and then you start to see more of the beauties, like everyday magic, like you mentioned
Yes.
your experience at the retreat, like realizing a bug, a bird, a butterflies, like how am or your body, like
Yes.
it's
Yes.
working amazingly, handling lots of things now that I don't
Yes.
know
Without our
yeah,
right, right,
yeah,
right. It's miraculous when we really pay close attention. But we're not trained in that way. And our brains don't necessarily work that way. We have the negativity bias that's well documented, where our brains are constantly looking for things that are going wrong as a way to protect us. No, thank goodness for the negativity bias. So that's why it takes a conscious effort, a deliberate effort to not be ruled by that, but to widen the aperture, so to speak, to see what else is here. And we can't do that as easily if our inner environment is filled with clinging and aversion, because we're always in resistance. We're always trying to be somewhere that where we're not. That's only accessible right here in the present moment. And it takes time to develop confidence in that because it's unfamiliar. And so I think this is where some of us, I know myself in the beginning, I was sort of impatient, you know. I was expecting, I'm like, what time is enlightenment? I mean, I got things to do. What time is this? What time am I waking up from suffering? Just let me know. And, kind of like what you were saying, like this, there was some arriving point or something. And um, what I realized is this sort of this quiet, uh, sincere, consistent orientation toward love as often as we're able to. That's the key. Because I don't know anybody who does that all the time. Everybody I know forgets, even teachers with decades and decades and decades of, they all forget. I've watched them. The difference is the quality of forgetting. They don't stay forgotten. They don't stay there. They recognize and they come back. And there's often a lightness to it too. There's often, this is just what brains do. I just went off on this person because I got triggered. And yeah, and let me notice it. This is just what my brain does. And if we're able to do that, then we're more likely to re-remember again. as opposed to berating ourselves. So I'm a teacher. I've been I've been at this for 30 years and I just went off on somebody because they cut me off on the road or something. Instead of continuing to judge ourselves, we say, wow, look at that. Perhaps there's information there. Maybe I need to rest.
At that moment, what is your practice?
Ah, the breath, just
The
like you
breath.
said, the breath. I know it sounds simple, but for me, there's signals in my body that let me know that I'm becoming disembodied.
Mm.
And one of them is I start to talk really fast. Uh, Sometimes my shoulders will go up. I'll move really fast when there's no need to rush. I'll be rushing when there's no need to rush. I won't stop working. I'll just keep going. I won't take breaks. And so that's sort of a signal for me to say, oh, I'm caught up in my thinking.
Mm.
I'm not here. I'm sort of caught up in my thinking. I need to get things done or I need to be seen in a particular way it's a signal for me to notice that I'm caught up. And so in that moment I notice it with care. I use humor a lot. So I notice it with some humor and with some care. I'll go, there you go again, girl. So I'll notice it. I'll notice it with some care and I'll say, come back, come back. And sometimes it's just a breath. Sometimes I'll take a walk. Sometimes I'll listen to music, to just sort of come back. And I remember when I was working in corporate America and I would be in these boardrooms and most times I would get triggered. Sometimes I would just put my hands on my thighs underneath the table and I would just rub my thighs because it was a way of coming. Your mind can be in all kinds of different places, but your
Mhm.
body's always right here. And so it's been helpful for me to, when I've noticed that I've left, I come back through the body. And so whether that's breathing or whether that's just putting my hands on my neck or my chest or my thighs or, Tara's always inviting me to do this. It's okay. Come back, come back. Because we are of the nature to forget.
Yes.
The practice is not forgetting.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anybody who does that. The
Yeah.
practice is the remembering over and over. It's the coming back. And in the coming back, we're strengthening our capacity to do just that. It's forward leaning, it's onward leading. And that's the practice. Sometimes it's really boring. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just, eating your meal. And but the fruits are extraordinary. And that's why the community piece is so important as well. And that's why what you're doing, I think, is really
Mm.
so important for us to have these conversations.
Oh, and thank you for this amazing conversation. Really,
Uh,
really, I
you're
hope
welcome. My
we can
pleasure.
touch women's hearts and we can help them. And
Yeah.
yeah, even we help one person, I would be deeply, deeply happy.
Yes.
Uh,
Same here. Same
yeah,
here. And just this reminder that we're in this together,
yes,
wherever we are in the world.
yeah,
Can we know that we're practicing together, we're in this together, and that's enough.
yeah,
That's enough.
yeah. Thank you very much. And
You're
Sharon,
welcome, my dear.
before closing, where can
Yeah.
people find you and your work?
You can just everything is located on my website and it's just
Okay,
listentoyourlife.com. Just
okay.
listentoyourlife.com. They could reach out to me. We can have a conversation. You can find out where I'm teaching and all that good stuff. I also have a Substack that you can see on my website as well. I do some writing, and so that's a real passion of mine. So, yeah, I'd love to connect if anyone would like to connect.
Okay, then I will add your website
Okay,
to the notes as well so that people can find it. Thank you very
that's
much.
awesome. You're welcome very
Mm.
much, my dear. Wishing you ease and peace and deep bow to a heart that wants to make
Mm.
this offering to you. This was fun. I enjoyed
Yeah,
being with you, my dear. Thank you
thank
for
you very
inviting me.
much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.